Hi, welcome back to my book club. My name is Hunter, I'm a therapist, and together we're reading The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris, with today's video being Chapter 11, The Value of Kindness. If you need caught up on the previous videos, head to the link in the description, and make sure to like this video, it really helps me out. And without further ado, let's get started. The Value of Kindness. Imagine you're on a grueling journey, and all sorts of terrible things keep happening. You've encountered obstacle after obstacle and you're struggling to keep going. Now, let's suppose you have a choice between two different companions. Option 1, a companion who says, "This isn't so bad, just suck it up and get on with it." And option 2, a companion who says, "This is really crap, but hey, we're in this together. I've got your back." Harris has asked literally thousands of people, which companion would you prefer? And so far, everybody has chosen the second. And then Harris asks, so what kind of companion are you being to yourself? Almost everyone replies, the first. When our close friends or loved ones are deeply suffering, most of us are instinctively kind, understanding, and supportive. Yet we find it extremely hard to treat ourselves the same way. Indeed, when Harris first introduced the idea of self-kindness, it's amazing how often people react negatively, especially if Harris calls it by its other name, self-compassion. Which begs the question, what does self-compassion mean? There are many different definitions of self-compassion, and Harris's is only 6 words long. Acknowledge your pain, respond with kindness. For most of us, self-compassion doesn't come naturally. When pain shows up, our default response modes are to obey it, allow it to push us around, or to struggle. Self-compassion is radically different from both. We simply acknowledge our pain and treat ourselves kindly. I will pop in here to say super quick that self-compassion is something that you're taught. We aren't born with the capacity to be kind with ourselves. We need role models or examples or someone to help teach us to be kind to ourselves. And as Harris continues, hundreds of scientific studies have demonstrated the many benefits of self-compassion for health, well-being, and happiness. And the good news is, you've already started doing this. You've been practicing this for the past 4 chapters in the acknowledge phase of ACE, and whenever you notice and name difficult thoughts and feelings. If you can't pinpoint the exact thoughts and feelings, you can use terms like suffering, hurt, pain, and loss. You may also like to add extra phrases such as here and now, or this is a moment of. When we say here and now, I'm noticing anxiety, or this is a moment of loneliness, it helps us remember that, much like the weather, our thoughts and feelings are changing all the time. Even amid great suffering, our cognitions and emotions change from moment to moment. Here and now, we may be noticing sadness, but later we'll be noticing different emotions. Please play around with these words and create a phrase that suits you. Like, this is a moment of suffering, or more everyday language, such as, this really hurts. Acknowledging our pain is just the first step in self-compassion. We then need to respond with genuine kindness. Objections to self-compassion. Earlier, Harris mentioned some common objections to self-compassion. Let's start with weak or stupid. If a good friend or loved one were suffering and you acknowledged their pain and supported them, would that be weak or stupid? Of course not. So neither is weak or stupid to treat yourself that way, even if your mind says it is. How about useless or passive? Self-compassion helps you cope with adversity and handle stress much better, protects you from depression, and facilitates recovery after setbacks. And it's definitely not a passive response to life's challenges. It's a form of actively supporting yourself. So what about the notion that it's selfish? Just like what flight crews say about oxygen masks, put your own on first before you try to help someone else. You can think of self-compassion the same way. How about demotivating? Let's go back to Michelle from chapter 3. This was her main objection to self-compassion. I need to be hard on myself, she said. That's how I get things done. It motivates me. If I was kind to myself, I'd never do anything. This idea is incredibly common, And yes, in the short term, being hard on yourself can often be motivating. But the long-term costs of this motivational method are enormous: stress, anxiety, exhaustion, or burnout. Finally, let's consider the objection, "I'm so bad, I don't deserve kindness." And again, this is your mind trying to be helpful in its own misguided way. Your mind thinks being hard on you is the best way to get results, to get you to shape up, sort yourself out, or be a better person. So look at that story in terms of workability. If you let it dictate your actions, does that take you toward or away from the life you want? Obviously, if it's helping you to do toward moves, to behave like the person you want to be, then there's no problem. But if it's taking you in the other direction, there's a choice to make. Are you going to go along with it? Or are you going to unhook and experiment with a different approach? If someone you care about were deeply struggling, how would you treat them? If you wanted to send them the message, "I see you're hurting, I care about you, and I'm here for you," what sort of things would you say and do? Self-compassion means treating ourselves the way we would treat a loved one. So let's kick off with a look at kind self-talk. Kind self-talk means speaking to ourselves in ways that are kind, encouraging, and supportive. But remember, the brain changes through addition, not subtraction. So we're not trying to delete those old neural pathways that give rise to harsh self-talk. We're laying down new ones on top of them to bring in self-kindness. So if harsh, judgmental self-talk shows up, we simply notice and name it. What kind of things should we say to ourselves? There are so many options. Suppose we're struggling to complete a difficult but important task, and our mind's saying, "This is too hard," or "I can't do it." First, we might thank our mind. Then we can try some self-encouragement, such as, "I can handle this," or "I can do this." If you're struggling to make changes in your behavior and you fall back into an old pattern, your mind might say, "This is hopeless, I can't change." Your self-compassionate response might be, "Here's the give-up story. What I'm trying to do here is really difficult, and today was a bad day. Over time, it'll get better." At this point, an important practical tip. It's not just the words you say that count, but also the way you say them. So be aware of the tone of your inner voice. If it's harsh, sarcastic, or uncaring, it will not have the desired effect. It needs to sound kind and caring. So throughout the day, whenever difficult thoughts and feelings arise, the idea is to acknowledge they're present and then remind yourself to respond with kindness and caring. To help with this, it's useful to have a simple catchphrase you can say to yourself. Harris's self-compassion catchphrase is, "This really hurts. Be kind." But play around with kind self-talk, using a kind tone of voice, and find your own way of doing it. Now, moving on from kind self-talk, let's explore the equally important role of kind actions. Self-compassion is not just about what we say to ourselves. It's also about what we do for ourselves. And really, the sky's the limit. Self-compassion actions could include practicing your unhooking skills, doing basic self-care such as healthy eating and regular exercise, or making time for rest and relaxation. The great thing is, you don't have to do anything dramatic. Even the tiniest little act of self-kindness counts. Now take 2 minutes to consider this. Go ahead and pause the video if you need. What are some kind actions you can do for yourself in the next few hours and the next few days? Please write down your answers if you find it helpful, or write it down on your phone. And over the next few hours and days, actually do those things and notice what it's like to do so. Harris asks the question, where to go from here? We've so far covered 3 important elements of self-compassion: unhooking from harsh judgmental self-talk, acknowledging our pain, and treating ourselves kindly. Over the next few chapters, we're going to cover a more important element: unhooking from painful emotions. But in the meantime, here's some troubleshooting from this chapter. It feels weird. This isn't me. I don't do this. At first, self-compassion may seem odd or unnatural. If so, that's a completely normal reaction. This is a new psychological skill. Maybe after you've practiced it 10,000 times, it will seem natural, but it definitely won't to begin with. It makes me feel anxious. If you've got a long history of deeply entrenched self-judgment, self-compassion might initially trigger anxiety. Your mind is suspicious. What is this? I don't know what this is. It's different. You may not be aware of those thoughts. You might just feel anxious, but that's what's going on inside your head. Another way to make sense of this anxiety is that it's like you're breaking the rules. This includes the rule, you are not allowed to be kind to yourself. Breaking this rule feels risky, so naturally, anxiety appears. Over time, if you practice self-compassion regularly until it becomes a familiar experience, that anxiety will lessen. But in the early stages, it will be there. It stirs up my negative self-talk. Sometimes kind self-talk can trigger a barrage of harsh self-judgment. Over time, you can expect these barrages to lessen and then stop. Whenever they occur, notice and name them. And if that doesn't help, drop anchor. And finally, it didn't make my feelings go away. And Harris says, it's not supposed to. It's not a struggle strategy. The aim is to acknowledge and allow your feelings to be present without a struggle, like resting the book in your lap in chapter 4, while also being kind and supportive to yourself. When difficult thoughts and feelings lessen or disappear, that's a bonus, not the main aim. Now that we're at the end of the chapter, I want to say again what I brought up earlier, that a skill like this, being kind to yourself, is something you have to learn and something you have to be taught. And here, Harris is giving you some tools for you to practice. Just like with riding a bike, we don't expect kids to get it perfect on the first try, and you shouldn't expect yourself to be perfect at this right away. Giving yourself some grace for when anxiety happens or some negative self-talk happens. Just going with the flow and dropping anchor if you need. And with that, thank you so much for reading this chapter with me. Leave a comment to let me know what you liked and like this video. It really helps out my channel. And join us next week for chapter 12, Hooked on a Feeling. I'll see you next week.